Well, good morning once again. Today is Holy Saturday, April 11th. We've almost made it. We're coming to the end of Holy Week. And tomorrow, we will celebrate once again the resurrection, the victory over death. But we need to go through today. Today is meant to be a day of reflection. We think about the disciples who hid in that room in fear and uncertainty. And today is the day that we enter into that time with them. So I want to begin by taking you back many, many, many years. In the year 1418, Thomas à Kempis wrote The Imitation of Christ. These are some words from that writing. Hear what he had to say. I avoid public gatherings as much as possible, for discussion of worldly affairs so quickly snares and encumbers the soul. Why is it we are so ready to chatter and gossip with others when we so seldom return to silence without some injury to our conscience? Perhaps the reason we are so fond of talking is that we think to find consolation in this matter: to refresh a spirit wearied with many cares. And so we speak of what we like and what we dislike, and of the things we desire or despise. But in the end, this outward attempt to find consolation is only an obstacle to our inner life. And then he continues, let us watch and pray that our time is not spent fruitlessly. Let us not busy ourselves with idle conversation or with what other people say and do. Blessed are the single-hearted, for they enjoy true peace. I think silence is one of our challenges. We find it so hard to sit in silence. We live in a noisy world. Even in this time when we are sheltering in place with the electronics, with children running around, with pets that are in new routines and aren't sure what to do because people are underfoot all the time. It isn't very quiet, is it? Sometimes I think we avoid silence because there are some things we don't want to think about. Sometimes silence brings us to a place of discomfort before it becomes comfortable. You know, over the years we have been inspired by many people. We have watched their lives, or we have heard stories from the past, and we have been in awe of how they have weathered the storms of their lives. I want to share one, and this one actually comes from 1871. Horatio Spafford was a prosperous lawyer, a real estate developer, and a devout Presbyterian elder, living comfortably in Chicago with his wife, Anna, and their children. Well, the year 1871 was a very difficult year for the Spaffords. Much of Horatio's real estate was lost in the Great Chicago Fire, and those investments disappeared. Not long after, they lost their 4-year-old son to scarlet fever. But in their lives, the worst was yet to come. Knowing that his friend D.L. Moody would preach in England in 1873, Spafford's family decided to vacation in Europe. Last-minute business detained Horatio, so Anna and the 4 girls sailed on an ocean liner. En route, a British vessel rammed the ship and it sank within minutes. Rescuers picked up an unconscious Anna on a floating spar, but all 4 daughters drowned. When Anna arrived in England, she sent a telegram to Horatio with the words, "Saved alone." Well, Horatio immediately left Chicago to bring his wife home. On the Atlantic crossing, the captain called Horatio to his cabin to tell him that they had nearly reached the spot where his 4 daughters had perished. As he passed over their watery grave, he wrote a hymn. It is a hymn that has comforted many over the years, including me. At that time he wrote, "It is well with my soul." He could find that peace in the midst of his pain only because of being sure in the knowledge that even when his daughters, even when his son could no longer be with them, that they were safe in the arms of Jesus. The pain was great. We can hear in the words of the song, even in the words that bring us confidence, we also know that it came out of a deep area of pain. In the moments as that ship crossed the Atlantic, Horatio Spafford was given the grace to find that center in the silence, to find that place where he could, in his pain, still make peace with what had happened. We're always surprised when we hear those stories. And we wonder, how can they do that? How can they come to the place in the midst of all that pain to find peace? That is the hope we have. What we find is, if we do not take times of silence, if we do not take times to reflect, that we never do find peace. When we don't allow our heart and our spirit to rest and to walk through what needs to be dealt with, we cannot find that peace. The disciples were struggling. And you can imagine that. They were afraid. They were in a place where their hope was dim. They had been with Jesus. They had seen a new way of living with God, a new way of being loved by God. And they were afraid, not just for their physical safety, but they were afraid that all of that had been taken away. You know, in this time, with the coronavirus, COVID-19, it feels as if the world is on hold. Most of us haven't gone anywhere except what we're required to do. Getting outside for walks, going to work when your work is essential. But it feels so different. And I think even that gives us a little sense of how these disciples felt on Saturday. They were grieving. They were afraid. And they were sheltering in place, with no idea how long it would last or what would come next. Well, fortunately, we know the end of the story. And sometimes today, Holy Saturday, it's important that we grab some moments, even brief moments, to let go of that for just a little bit. To identify with those disciples. To identify with what was going on for them. Some of what we fear and what we feel anxious about right now. So we are all urged today to take a time of silence. Yesterday I mentioned light a candle, put it in a safe place, but where, as you are about what you need to do today, where you can see it. Find some time to sit in silence as the disciples did, as stunned as they were. For us to sit and reflect on what that was like. We know out of today comes new life, but sometimes we do have to grieve for the things that are lost. May you find those moments today before we once again celebrate the truth we know tomorrow. Amen.